Hi everyone, welcome to today's workshop. We're just going to wait another minute to allow some people to join and then we will get going. Thanks for joining us. Okay, I think in the interest of time, we will get started. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining, which is now the 9th in the series of this workshops hosted by Social Impact Hub as part of the RISE program, which is kindly supported by Westpac Foundation and Paul Ramsey Foundation. Happy Friday to everyone. My name's Rob. Alongside my colleague Jess Liang and the broader Social Impact team, it's been an absolute pleasure bringing you this series of workshops to support the social enterprise and for-purpose sector. I know a number of you have been joining over the last few months, and hopefully these workshops continue to deliver value for you. Please keep us informed and send us your feedback. Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today. For me, that's the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, as well as extending this more broadly, acknowledging that we're dialing in collectively from a range of locations today. Just before we dive into the session, a little bit of housekeeping, which we're probably all familiar with now on Zoom. If you're not talking or participating in the session, just please keep yourself on mute so we can minimize background noise. If you have any questions or comments, we really encourage you to jump in, make this as interactive as possible for a Friday afternoon. Put your question, comment in the chat, or feel free at the appropriate time just to unmute and share. And if you can, please turn on your camera so we can try and encourage interactivity. These sessions are really great in being able to learn new content and understand new concepts, but at the same time, it's a really great opportunity to meet new people and build that network of colleagues and peers who are working in this space. So I definitely encourage you to have your camera on where it's viable to do so. Any technical challenges, please drop myself a private message or Jess Liang, who's on the call. We'll do our best to help you. The session is being recorded as well, so if you're having some connectivity challenges, just let us know and we can always share that recording after the session. Okay, that's everything from my side. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Hannah Sturrock. She's our facilitator today. She's going to be taking us through today's session on Brand Manifesto. So this is the second in a 3-part series on impact. Those who joined a few weeks ago, we started this series kicking off theory of change. What does that mean? How do you develop one for your organization to articulate your impact? And today's session is picking up on that thread and looking at how we take theory of change and this concept of golden thread and start bringing that into our communications and our branding and getting that out there to our audiences and the people that we serve. And so Hannah's going to walk you through that process and share some of her expertise and talk to you about something called a brand manifesto. So it's super exciting to have Hannah here, and I will hand over to you now. Welcome, Hannah, over to you.
Thanks, Rob. Hello, everybody. I'm in Sydney, also in lockdown. So yes, I'm sure most people are wearing yoga pants or stretchy waistbands underneath their business top. I know I am. So just celebrate that little bit of comfort for a Friday afternoon. I would also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. I acknowledge and celebrate the Wongal people, which is where I am today, of the Eora Nation as the traditional custodians of the land which I live and work on, and also acknowledge their rich storytelling culture, which is really relevant to what we're talking about today. Yeah, great, Alison, you are not in lockdown. Like Victorians just, yeah, you can for once just proudly walk around and live your life. So today, we are, as Rob said, we're going to dive into a really emotive and compelling kind of storytelling space. And I'm going to try and share with you, I guess, the basics of how to build your own story about for your social enterprise. So I'm going to give you there's going to be a little bit of an intro, and we're going to a couple of quick exercises, which I'm calling a pitch, but really it's just a kind of a sales pitch for a brand. We're going to talk about some marketing fundamentals. I just can't help myself but give you a little bit of the marketing theory rather than getting straight into kind of the tactics. So I hope you will indulge me with some of the fundamental pieces of marketing theory that you can take away and just have in the back of your head when you're building your brand. We're going to do a quick recap on the theory of change, not deep because it's like a whole workshop in itself, and hopefully many of you have tuned in for the theory of change workshops as part of this series. And then we're going to get into telling stories. So your story, which is your kind of brand building blocks, your vision, purpose, mission, and then telling our story, which is kind of taking it up to a slightly higher level. And that's where we're talking about the kind of the manifesto for the brand. So here's a little introduction to me. I've worked in the advertising industry for almost 20 years now. I've joined startups, established agencies, and I'm now working also with the industry body, the Advertising Council of Australia, on best practice for the ad industry. I've worked on small brands and some of the biggest in the world. Last year, I led the design and launch of Australia's newest streaming service, Binge. And I'm a fan of combining art and science to make brands more intelligent, more engaging, and more memorable. So that was an introduction to me. I don't know, it felt a little bit like standard. It wasn't kind of told you what I've done, what I've worked on, my CV. I don't know if you felt though that it was particularly like it grabbed you and you went, oh, this is fascinating. So let me see if I could just replay that introduction to me, but with a little bit of a twist. I'm a creative marketing strategist at heart. I have a degree in journalism, so I love using words to communicate ideas and feelings and insights. Having worked with established and challenger brands, startups, and social enterprises, I love interrogating the inner workings of businesses and discovering the special sauce that gives them a unique fingerprint. It might be their purpose, but more often it's a spirit or an attitude, a way of seeing the world that nobody else can copy. I believe that every brand has a story behind it, whether they're trying to make the world a better place or just sell credit cards. My job is to dig deep, excavate it, clean it up, and finally reveal its splendor to the world. So my mission is to build distinctive, storied brands that equal the ambition of the founders and connect with the messy, beautiful side of human behavior. And I believe in the power of story as a turbocharged power tool for generating that meaning in others. So, which story about me was kind of more memorable? Hopefully you think the second one rather than just my LinkedIn profile. But it's the story that paints a picture, right? It's that makes our brain switch from autopilot into kind of active attention. Because in this business that we're all in, whether you're selling yourself, your products, or your business, attention is our most valuable currency. And today we are going to dive into the tools that we can use to capture the attention of our audiences, who, no matter whether they're customers, punters going about their business, whether they're investors, or other businesses, if you're in the B2B space, all of these people are being targeted daily with competing messages. And, you know, humans, we still pretty much think the same way that we did 20,000 years ago. The vast majority of our decisions are just quick, instinctive, they're driven by emotion and experience. A few maybe are a bit more kind of considered and difficult, where we have to engage our rational brains. But usually that's when we have to process sort of complex or ambiguous information. Nowadays, we have names for these two ways that human beings make decisions. The quick instinctive way is called System 1, and the difficult considered way is System 2, and most of our choices are made through System 1. They are, as a psychologist, Gerd Gerzinger puts it, fast and frugal. Daniel Kahneman, who's the psychologist that popularized this sort of System 1 and 2 model, says, thinking is to humans as swimming is to cats. They can do it if they have to, but only in dire emergencies. So emotion is really essential to making judgments. Being able to recall something readily is fine, but if you can't summon up a feeling about it as well, you're unlikely to be able to make a decision in favor of it. So emotion is the key. Seduction beats persuasion every time. If a choice feels better to our System 1 minds, it is better. Emotion will help us to guide and simplify decision making, giving us just little nudges in one direction or another. But how do you come to feel good about a brand or a product, especially if you haven't experienced it before? If everyone just thinks for a moment about a memorable ad, an ad that kind of jumps into your head without you having to think too hard about it. You may not have experienced that brand, but you've probably experienced something that created a positive impression about that brand. And possibly that was advertising of some description. These impressions often do take time to form, but these emotional associations help us make quick and easy decisions between the options in front of us when the moment comes to buy. It's called mental availability, which is another bit of jargon. But emotion makes possible all the other things that you want your advertising to achieve, whether it's getting people to share a video or make your brand famous or approve of an application for funding or follow your brand on social media. The rule of thumb is, if you feel more, you buy more. And if you feel more, you're also likely to pay more too, which is really important in the social enterprise space because you can't always undercut the competition. You probably do have a higher cost of production. So the stakes are higher for social enterprises. We need people to develop a bit of brand love, not just brand like. So creativity and emotion aren't just luxuries that help get a message across, they are quite simply what makes advertising work. And look, guys, the bar is pretty low actually in many ways. This is the kind of wallpaper advertising that we're surrounded with all the time, like just flat, graphic, just no humanity, a few words. The products all kind of look the same, even though they're all trying to say something differently. We're kind of inundated with these messages all the time, but a lot of them are so unengaging. They're not delightful. They're not entertaining. They're not funny. They're just messages. Yeah, and to your point, humor, massively important and powerful emotion to leverage. We don't have to go with an ad that is heart, pulling on the heartstrings. Although that does often stick in our mind, humor and other emotions are super powerful. So yeah, absolutely. And I don't know what ad you've selected there in YouTube, but I will probably have a look because I'm a nerd about ads. So here's some, just in contrast to some of those ads for credit cards, mobile phone apps, and neobanks, here are some really distinctive brands. These brands always lead with emotion, whether that's kind of surprise, humor, to your point, Yumi, a point of view on the world. They have a visual tone or style. They're memorable. It's like they force our brains to kind of a bit of a record scratch and go, hang on, what's this? So Patagonia is telling us not to buy one of its own products because they want to encourage us to reuse, recycle. Nike supporting Colin Kaepernick, who was the American footballer who was attacked by the public for kneeling during the national anthem. Always a feminine hygiene brand who has gone out really hard to support women and female self-image. And they had an incredible campaign called Like a Girl, which tried to change the perception of women and what running like a girl, throwing like a girl, what that really meant. And this one from KFC, when they actually ran out of chicken and they ran this ad, which was very effective. And when you boil it down, here are your 4 drivers of brand advantage: fame, mental availability, recognition, and perception of value. And fame, mental availability, and recognition, all of those will be your system 1 brain going, yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah, I've got a positive emotion against it. Yeah, it feels familiar. I'm going to buy it. And the perception of value, yes, your rational brain may get involved, but a lot of the time, if you've got fame, mental availability, and recognition, you will override any price differential. I was talking about this with my brother the other night, and we were actually weighing up how we were looking at how Uber Eats is now charging $4 service fee or something on top of the delivery fee. And we were like, for the exact same food to be delivered to our house from Uber Eats to Menulog, Uber Eats was going to cost maybe an extra 70 cents. And as we know, Uber Eats does not make the food, they just deliver the food. There's no other reason why I would choose Uber Eats over Menulog, because it's the same product delivered in the same way via the same user interface, but I'm going to pay a little bit more to Uber Eats because Uber Eats has established its brand so strongly in my mind that I won't even notice that I'm paying an extra 70 cents. But that extra margin for Uber Eats will be massive when it's scaled up. And that's because they have really invested in their brand and have created that ownership of the category in a way. So we're going to have a quick little warm up just to get you into sort of thinking about how you can communicate a brand in a different way. So the first brief for you is just 1 sentence that communicates the product and benefits. So not a paragraph, just a sentence. Pick one of these products. We've got Thank You, the Bread and Butter Project, and Who Gives a Crap. Choose one, just scribble down what is the product and the benefit of this product. I'll give you 2 minutes and then you can pop your answers in the chat. Jess can play some thinking music if that would help. Okay. Everybody written a sentence about one of those three products? Or were you sort of just transported by the soft piano music? If you want to pop your sentence into the chat, or if you want to, you can turn your mic on and tell us what you wrote, but totally up to you. A cleaner you and a better world. That's great. Supporting the Bread and Butter Project helps put bread on the table of people who can't afford it. The most delicious bread I've eaten in my whole life. I took a bite and the whole room dimmed around me and this piece of bread. That was powerful. Wash your hands and help the world. Loaves that change lives. I like that everybody's already thinking about end lines. Nice. Saving the world one sheet at a time. Who gives a crap? That's great. Okay, so this exercise, every loaf, all of these are about just, thinking about, okay, this is the product, I'm pitching the product and the benefit of the product. So that's kind of what we're seeing in the chat is it's the product and how it impacts the world. Do I just need to go back and share my screen again, I think? Yeah. Okay, so doing what you do every day helps someone else, so thank you. It's very good. Okay, so we will come back to this, guys, because it's sort of, I'm building a narrative. I'm going to play a ad for you now. Some of you might actually know it. It's quite famous, but it's from a while ago, so maybe it'll be new for some of you. So what the hell has that got to do with this, hey? A gorilla playing the drums for Cadbury. But Cadbury Gorilla is one of the most famous ads of the last 25 years. And it doesn't tell you or show you or talk about chocolate at all. But it does do an amazing job of creating some kind of emotional response. There's this kind of anticipation and this kind of strange joy. I don't know about you. I don't know if it's just that kind of the build and then the big drum solo, but you sort of, your heart rate goes up a little bit, or I don't know. I just find it one of those ads that you can't help but feel something when you watch it. And it's a really intriguing concept as well, because you're like, what is this? It builds this kind of intrigue. I'm watching a giant monkey, tiny facial expressions. We want to know more. And we don't really get the payoff or the satisfaction until the branding appears right at the very end. And this means that the brain kind of is staying highly engaged in wanting to know more. And we're paying attention through the ad, and we do take on board the final branding. It's a very subtle cue of purple as well, which is Cadbury's kind of one of Cadbury's distinctive assets is there. So that ad, and whether, I don't know if it was actually on international, but it was very famous in I think it was created in the UK market, but it's remained in our memories long after it's finished airing. And I think it's interesting because the brain often kind of rejects overt selling messages and kind of filters them out, whereas brand cues like colors, shapes, and sounds can kind of get in under the radar. And in this one, Cadbury wants to stand for and communicate joy. That's what they want to sell, the feeling of joy. And then if they create that connection strongly in our minds, then we will be more likely to think of Cadbury when we think, oh, I'd quite like a sweet treat. And yeah, look, it's not everyone will kind of love the ad, but I just wanted to show it as being a way where there's almost no product messaging at all, and just an emotion that is being communicated through music, and a kind of a slow build. So what I'd like to do now is just to get you to go back to the product that you wrote the pitch for before and rewrite your pitch, but this time write it just how the brand makes you feel. Now, I think we already did have one amazing, line about, I took a bite, the whole room dimmed around me and the piece of bread. I mean, that is a definite religious experience that has occurred there. But if you wanted to just have another go at writing, whether it's about thank you, bread and butter project, or who gives a crap, but with a how does it make you feel spin. As a person who buys it, maybe. I need to give a crap about the world around me. Yep, that sort of taps into your own personal driver there. I don't think we need, I'm happy to just read them out, Jess. I think especially when you're buying products that do good things, it's easy to focus on the outcome, not always on how we feel about buying them. Bread that warms your heart. Yeah, that's a nice one. Feel clean, feel good. Yeah, that's a good one as well. It's like kind of attaches the functional benefit of the product to the emotional payoff. Do you give a crap? I think there's a really interesting aspect, Sarah, in that idea of social norming. And, if everybody is looking to sort of signal that they do care, then asking, well, do you give a crap about things? And that's why I think actually this who gives a crap is super clever brand. I'm going to show a slide in a minute which sort of demonstrates that, some of that. But yeah, it's a little tweak on what we did before. We focused on the product benefit. Now we're trying to just go, how do I feel when I buy it? So when also, when, yeah, oh, wow. Look at this. I feel like this bread and butter project has really changed you as a person. It's good bread, and bread is a bit like chocolate. Bread is just such a pleasure, right? Beautifully baked bread is such a simple pleasure. But when charities do use emotion, they often naturally communicate the plight of those they're trying to help, or the state of the world. And it's understandable, not in itself bad, but the problem is that charity advertising obviously often leverages negative emotions, and people don't like being made to feel bad all the time. People are more inclined to buy if they can see and feel something of the ultimate reward. So advertising in this sector can be a bit transactional in nature. Sometimes it's conceived for immediate fundraising purposes rather than long-term brand building. And it can have a tendency to try and persuade using rational messages, make people feel more. But if you can make people feel more, then, and feel better about themselves, it will get people to put their hands in the pockets. I know it sort of feels a bit manipulative, but we do need to trigger the brain to feel some sort of pride in purchasing a product like Thank You, Who Gives a Crap, or the Bread and Butter Project. Happiness is a much underused emotion in charitable or impact businesses. So, as I said, I did want to give you a couple of little pointers just on the marketing fundamentals. I just wanted to be really clear up front about marketing, what it is, and how many parts of your business are actually part of the marketing mix. So the 4 Ps is a bit of any marketing student will talk about this. I know that Sarah is a graduate of the 4 Ps School of Marketing. So it includes your product, what you are selling, and the customer experience in actually buying it. So that could be the online customer experience or the physical customer experience. The place where people buy our product, how it's distributed, price, which is the kind of price market research, dynamics, whether it's a premium product or a discount pricing, whether there's a subscription model, different payment options, and promotion. So this is what a lot of people think of as marketing, is the promotion part of the mix, which is sort of what, it's more like the comms part, the advertising aspect, which is who are we talking to, where are we talking to them, and what are we saying to them. But marketing is all of those things. So it's more than simply branding and advertising. It's strategically influencing perceptions and behavior. So all of those things, product, place, price, and promotion, they can all help to influence perception and behavior. Today, we are going to concentrate on the promotion part because it's about what we're saying. And brand, another word that we talk about a lot. Brand is more than your logo. So brand is going to be the story that people recall when they think of you, the experience, how it feels to buy, interact, work with, or for you. So your employees will actually influence your brand as well, because the experience of working for you will be translated into your brand. And then the distinctive assets. So yes, logos, colors, fonts, etc. And these are the things that you are using consistently, that are recognizable. But they can also be attitudinal. They could be sonic. They could be a tone of voice. And also, your founder could potentially be part of your brand. So brand building is kind of considered the creation of future demand. So it's when new customers are becoming aware of a brand and add it to their consideration set. So it's at this point that they become more likely to respond to more performance marketing, direct marketing efforts. And here's an example. As I said before, I really think Who Gives a Crap is a great example of a brand operating in this space, because they do have really distinctive visual assets. You know, here's the logo and the fonts and the colors and the patterns that they use. But you can see it's their attitude, how they show up in the world, how they talk, the tone of voice, the fact that they use all these really unusual touch points to connect with you, like even the big brown cardboard box that, you know, most people would just throw away. They brand that and put a message there for the delivery driver who is going to be dropping it off at their customers' doorsteps. There's a picture there of their founder, Simon Griffiths, and he often shows up in their communications. He is kind of like a face of the brand, if you like. So he's part of their suite of branding assets as well. And brands grow by appealing to both sides of our brain. So there is the rational, price, content, product features, quality, and the more emotional side. Branding, story, behavior, purpose, memory, or in the Cadbury example, the music is a really emotional sort of short cut into that system one brain. So we're really trying to create and refresh memory structures through advertising, because it just essentially helps people recall your brand and making it top of mind when they're in a buying situation. Who Gives a Crap are brilliant on, like, they just look at every single touch point and they go, how can we make that more interesting, more charming, more engaging? So yeah, the verification emails, incredible. And they are brilliant, I think, in the putting the pretty wrapping paper on the toilet paper. It gives people a way to signal that they are a supporter of the brand, because people use bathrooms all the time, see the pattern, and you don't even have to tell them that you are a human that likes to do good for the world, who is a conscious consumer, because the brand wrapper does it for you. Genius, I reckon. So yes, let's just skip through some of that. And I always say lead with emotion to build brand salience, and close with reason to acquire the customer. And this is something I think is really important for us in the sector, is this idea of the ethical consumer. And this is something I really want everyone to think about. It's not the nicest thing to always wrestle with, which is that you like to believe that humans are good and that they will make good choices in how they spend their money. But there's been a lot of studies into this kind of the myth of the ethical consumer, which sort of provides evidence that while consumers profess a social consciousness in surveys, they fail to live up to that when their behavior is examined directly or via a really structured experiment. And I think Rob was saying that this is, in a couple of weeks, there's going to be another workshop around social procurement. And even in the sort of business to business space, there's this, a barrier to overcome, which is how do we get people to pay a little bit more for a socially responsible brand? Because in procurement, they're judged and KPI'd, and everything is just about reducing costs on a spreadsheet. So there's a massive barrier there to selling a product that actually does do good for the world, but if you examine it in a spreadsheet, it looks like it might be more expensive, and therefore, will people choose it? Will people buy? And yeah, this example is just around, you know, the free the organic apple for $2.60 and a non-organic apple. Would you purchase the free trade organic apple or the non-organic apple? And in front of a group, 70% said they would buy the organic, whereas in private, only 2% of them bought the organic apple. So we can't just accept that people will do good. It must be good for them in their role as a consumer, investor, employee, and so on. That's why I was trying to go back into that exercises. We can talk about that it does good for the world, but unless we kind of prove that it's actually like, what's in it for me? What's in it for me? Is it more delicious? Is it looking beautiful in my bathroom? Does it smell great? Is it better for my skin? Like, the selfish reason will often be how you need to lead, and then follow up with the altruistic reason in order to trick our lazy brains. Shopping is largely anonymous, selfish, and price-focused. Depressing, but true. And I like this quote from David Ogilvy, who's an advertising guru of the kind of the Mad Men era. The trouble with market research is that consumers don't think how they feel, they don't say what they think, and they don't do what they say. So we're just impossible. We're impossible things to predict. But luckily, people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel, because this is a more enduring mechanism that we can use. Back to these ads, it's a feeling first, and these brands will be memorable and be top of mind and have a competitive advantage, and probably be able to charge a little bit more for their product as well, because we've created this memory structure, powerful and durable memory structure. So to summarize, this section is really just to talk about the fundamentals of brand building. Is treat your brand as a fundamental and powerful component of growing your business. It will pay off, because iconic brands are market leaders and perform better than other companies in the same space. They hold pricing power, and their customers are less price sensitive. They're more scalable and have the ability to diversify into different markets. They're more resilient through times of economic uncertainty. They can acquire customers at a lower cost, and they have an unfair advantage when it comes to customer loyalty. So I encourage you to spend the time up front building your brand. There was another workshop that the Hub ran on branding, which you might be able to go back and watch, which did kind of go into a little bit more of the how to create your brand blueprint. And it's really worth spending time on that, because you will find that there is a tone of voice, there's an attitude, there's a story that your brand can really own. And that will really help you as you move into communicating that to the world in all the different ways that you need to communicate. So let's get into the sort of the case study, and moving from from the theory into a story. So quick recap on theory of change. This is the super important and rigorous process that all enterprises should go through in order to get super clear on what the impact is that you are trying to affect, and also how you're going to be able to measure that when it comes to reflecting on your impact and being able to tell that story. We talk about a theory of change being built out of the inputs, so all the resources that you'll use to pursue your goals, the activities, which are all the things that your business will undertake to achieve your program goals, The outputs are the tangible things that you are making or creating, that your resources and actions are in service of. Outcomes is where it starts to get a little bit more, I guess, it moves from a tangible into a slightly more intangible. But yet something that we really want to get clear on is the outcome of our actions. It's the changes that we will be able to bring about as part of our program. And then impact is really like the higher order, almost lofty goal, the world-changing goal that you're shooting for, which is that longer-term permanent change that you're trying to create. And you might never get there, but it's like that's the kind of the North Star. And so this process of creating a theory of change is a really comprehensive description, and then you can edit it down to get the most impactful activities. So you kind of sort through all of the stuff and really distill down to the most potent pieces of the program. And then you can craft that into a program logic statement or golden thread. So I'm going to take you through some of this work for one of the Hub's RISE program participants, which is the Beautiful Bunch. They're a Melbourne-based business. They sell flowers. Give them a follow. If you're in Melbourne, please buy a bunch. They train young women from refugee and asylum seeker backgrounds and help them to find long-term employment. Really, really small though, like tiny micro enterprise, only really formed during COVID when their previous business couldn't operate anymore because it was an events business. So we did a theory of change workshop and we mapped all of these activities, outputs and outcomes. And we had a Miro board, and this is sort of just a snapshot of what we had written there. And then we distilled it down into a golden thread. And this is the exact statement that we landed on, which is if we employ, train and support young women, Victorian women from refugee backgrounds by providing safe and culturally informed employment with a female-led floristry business, and by training them in floral design, customer service and business administration, and by providing peer and industry mentoring, it will induct them into the expectations of paid work, develop their practical and interpersonal skills, and introduce them to new opportunities, leading to increased confidence, belongingness, and drive to achieve their potential and increase their chances of long-term employment. And ultimately, giving them a sense of purpose and identity that drives economic and social participation and personal well-being while strengthening social cohesion and developing community role models. So that is the golden thread for the Beautiful Bunches enterprise program. It's not sort of super punchy, is it? It's really comprehensive, and it's awesome to have that articulated when it comes to measuring and measurement frameworks. Like, it's essential. But it's like you really have to concentrate and think and listen to every point and try and kind of piece it together in your mind so that you can kind of grasp what is it that the Beautiful Bunch is shooting for. Why should I support them? So what we did is we took the golden thread and we started to look at how we could build that into a more friendly human story. And that's just where I think this is now how to kind of take all of this theory and deep understanding and start to play with it and build it into a simpler, easier to understand, but also a engaging story. Because as a social enterprise, you do have a why. It's really clear. Your task is to share that purpose, but you have to share it clearly, concisely, and consistently. Use your golden thread as the jumping off point, and then emote. So leave the theory and the measurement behind and use emotive human language. and describe. So this is where you need to describe the status quo, create an enemy, dramatize the size and scale of the mission, and try and get like one statement into one slide. So short and punchy. Now, this is just to kind of help you to think about this for your business. Here's some prompts that ultimately these prompts will give you an answer that you can then use in your brand story. You should be able to answer all of these questions. If you can't, there's probably a little bit of work you still need to do in just articulating your brand, what you stand for, your values, and so on. But if you can, this is a good exercise to go through to help formulate in your mind these kind of key messages. So who's behind your enterprise? Like, all businesses have got people in them, behind them, and around them. Who or what needs your support? What outcome are you shooting for? This one I really like. We want to live in a world where. So that's where you can kind of go, what's the vision here? It can be a little bit utopian, but it should be a really crisp articulation of what that world looks like. What's stopping you? That's the enemy part. Like, you've got to create this idea of, this is a tough problem that we're trying to solve. We need your help. We will show the world. This is kind of the rallying cry part. And why should I care? Like, what's the benefit to me of this? And it could be quite selfish, but it could also be altruistic. So if you want to pick one or two of those for your business, I would encourage you to maybe look at, like, we want to live in a world where, and what's stopping you. I think those two are really interesting because it's kind of that tension point between sort of rainbows and unicorns and, no, there's a barrier here that we're trying to fight. Looking at the time, I think we could probably give maybe like 4 minutes of time for you to just have a think about this for your business. Pick two and have a crack. Maybe some thinking music, Jess, if you want to bring out your tiny keyboard and just play us a beautiful tune. Okay, how did everybody go with those two statements? Does anyone want to share on audio, or do you want to just put it in the chat? No one's feeling particularly brave. We want to live in a world where young people can aspire to a better future. What's stopping them is their immediate role models and not knowing where their opportunities are. Yeah, that's good, Gail. I think what's also important to think about is what's stopping them, but also what's stopping us from supporting them, because they have got barriers, but there's also probably that societal barrier as well that we need to kind of change or shift in some way. Girl Guides, we want to live in a world where girls feel empowered to be the best they can dream to be. What's stopping us? Reaching them so we can help. Okay, that's interesting. So it's really just a matter of connecting with this audience is the barrier there. Yeah, interesting. Okay, well, keep putting things in the chat if you want to, because I think it's all really interesting. So I do think this is important, the idea of the barrier point is sometimes where you get some really interesting tension that you can play with. We want to live in a world where older women don't have to be homeless. What's stopping us? Ageism, sexism, and the neoliberal agenda, which is driving policies which further entrench the economic divide. Yeah, that's a big enemy. It's good to have a big enemy. So I'm going to just share with you guys sort of how we built this story into blocks for the Beautiful Bunch. Here's some of the girls that work for them, with Jane, the founder, on the right-hand side. This is all designed into a slides deck. I personally think it's really good to do this into slides because it forces you to get really crisp about what you're saying and not write like an essay. So that's why I will be like, I need to put this into slides in order to kind of tease out the real nuggets. So what we do, we are a female-founded floral delivery enterprise helping young women, Victorian women from refugee backgrounds to bloom with skills, confidence, and social capital. So crisp, says what it needs to say. We don't need to read an 8-part golden thread. We just get it very much like, okay, I get what you do, tells me everything I need to know. Our people: Jane Marks, founder, entrepreneur, social campaigner, hustler, fundraiser, teacher, host, community builder, mentor, stylist, mother. There's always a human person behind the business. Our challenge: being young, female, and from a refugee background means the challenges to entering the workforce are effectively tripled. So we've created 3 enemies, I guess, and we've made them look like this is significant and worthy of support. This is a little bit longer because this is kind of where we get into just the subtlety of what we're trying to do. Young women from refugee backgrounds are faced with the triple disadvantage of gender, class, and migration status. Their family environments and caring responsibilities often dissuade them from seeking out a fulfilling career. Their social networks are extremely limited, and they often have no mentors, sponsors, or role models in their lives. To effectively tackle all 3 of these barriers, it's critical to provide a safe, structured, like-minded female community to gently introduce these young, sometimes trauma-affected women to the world of paid work while building their confidence and capacity to engage in professional employment. Our vision: we believe in a world where marginalized young women from refugee backgrounds have a sense of purpose and identity that drives their economic and social participation, improves their self-image, and strengthens Australia's social cohesion. Our mission: to employ, train and support young women from refugee backgrounds by providing safe and culturally informed employment with a female-led floristry business, leading to increased confidence and empowerment and vastly improved long-term employment potential. So that's how I've done the sort of story blocks. And the real use case here is not a presentation necessarily. These story blocks can be used in all of your comms. So you can take this base and you can use them in your pitch decks because you just want to do a really clear upfront who we are, what we do, why we do it. Funding applications is also really good because you don't have to write the whole thing from scratch. You can just pull a lot of these story blocks into a funding or grant application format. You might have to tweak them a little bit, but you've got the building blocks there. And marketing communications as well. So parts of these story blocks can appear on your website, on social media, in sponsorship packs or requests, press releases, and even your job advertisements as well. So I have got, so yeah, don't reinvent the wheel every time. I think that's what we're trying to do is just, I know with the Beautiful Bunch, like Jane was always like, she was kind of writing these long emails and spending a lot of time crafting the emails. And kind of, I was like, no, you could just use this story block. We put it into a one-pager and you can sort of set up the email, but just send the deck or the proposal to your recipient. And it's going to be consistent every time. The story is more consistent the more you repeat these same sort of phrases. And she's found that really useful. And also in a grant application, she's kind of like thinking about it all from as if it was a blank piece of paper, whereas we had this then developed. We could say, look, we can use a lot of this in the grant application. So don't reinvent the wheel every time if you don't have to. Say the same things in the same way to build your brand story and tone of voice. And it really does save you time. As a social enterprise, you don't have a lot of it, so be frugal. And it also helps to build consistency and increase your brand recognition. Here's some examples just of how the Beautiful Bunch, are communicating. It might be on a social post or their website. On the top right-hand side is actually one of the one pages that we put together for I think it was for a sponsorship or a partnership request. But the story becomes really simple, good drumbeat of what we do, why we do it, who we're for. And then the tweak on this is to build our story. And this is not so much about talking about our business. It's really to kind of take that into the manifesto space. So to capture hearts and minds, it's not enough to say what you do and what you believe. We need to connect to what our potential customers want for themselves. So this is how we move into that kind of connecting into a bigger rallying cry to unite the audience and your brand to feel the same things and want the same goal. And really inspire people to change the world with the idea that the brand is a supporter and it mirrors the audience's values. So this is where the brand manifesto changes gears, probably takes it up a level as well. I won't read that, but here's an example of like Apple's brand manifesto. Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them, but the only thing you can't do is ignore them because they change things. They push the human race forward. And while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. And Nike, somehow we've come to believe that greatness is only for the chosen few, for the superstars. The truth is, greatness is for all of us. This is not about lowering expectations. It's about raising them for every last one of us. Greatness is not in one special place, and it's not in one special person. Greatness is wherever somebody is trying to find it. I won't play that. So the beautiful bunch, again, think about your theory of change and your golden thread. It's tempting to sort of write a manifesto with inspiring words and ideas, but if your enterprise isn't really aligned with these goals, the manifesto will seem a bit disingenuous. So the golden thread is built on what you actually do. There needs to be that authentic connection between your brand and what's being said in the manifesto. And it's not always super easy to kind of spot or fix it. But if you've done that work required on the theory of change and the golden thread, you will have a more compelling goal and a plan to get there. And if the impact on the world is minimal, then yeah, I mean, like, what are we doing this for? You would kind of, goes without saying, but any manifesto for a successful brand, none of them are flat and dull or without ambition. A manifesto isn't a way to sort of show how a brand is great or how a product is high quality. It's the chance to give audiences an idea of how their lives could align in a whole new way with the powerful ideals of the brand. So you're bringing people into your brand. You're not telling them to buy it. You're saying, join us, you're one of us. So this is what we did for the beautiful bunch. Beautiful flowers, beautiful people. Beautiful bunch of fresh flowers is one of life's simplest pleasures, whether bought for yourself or for someone else. Flowers always make us feel good. But what makes us feel even better? Flowers that make us feel good twice. At the Beautiful Bunch, we believe in flowers that empower. Each bouquet is a symbolic stepping stone into long-term employment for young women from refugee backgrounds. A beautiful bunch of flowers says more than I care about you. It says I care about our community. I care about women. I care about equality. I care about opportunity. A beautiful bunch says I care about people. The Beautiful Bunch, beautiful flowers by beautiful people. So Brand Manifesto is all about emotion. You can weave in your purpose or your impact, but don't talk about what you do. Focus on why you do it and who is in your tribe, people who think like you, and you talk about it in a way that people go, yeah, I want to be, I think like that, or I want to see myself like that, even if, you know, maybe it's a little bit aspirational. But choose your story. What narrative do you want your customers to share about your business? Manifesto needs to inspire with a hopeful message. Get the tone of voice right. It's not just what you say, it is how you say it. And I know you probably heard that before, but do the work up front to create a distinctive tone of voice for your brand. As you said before and observed before, the way that Who Gives a Crap talks is, it's not all sort of chest beaty and worthy. It's like totally taking the piss out of themselves a lot of the time. It's really lighthearted. And bring your audience in. Everyone reading or listening to the manifesto should feel something. Use we in the manifesto to indicate a uniting of brand and audience in something bigger. So that's kind of like my tips on how to craft it. It's not the easiest thing to do. It takes some time and some good writing skills, but have a go at it because it really does lift you from a intellectual statement of benefits and product features, and it takes you into this kind of rallying cry and story. So, quick summary, we're almost out of time. Marketing's more than advertising. Remember that. Good marketing underpins most growth drivers. Brand is more than your logo. Strong branding builds long-term memory structures. Humans are not logical. We're emotional. We're story-making machines, And we can't always say what we feel or why. Know what drives human behavior. That's your secret weapon here. Invest in your brand up front. Build a fully formed personality with values and a voice. Find an edge that allows you to be distinctive. So don't just let yourself sink into the wallpaper of other brands trying to do good. Find an edge, find a tone, find something that you can play with and really dial up. Understand the basics, build for behavior, and find your edge. Maybe use a gorilla playing the drums if appropriate. And that's pretty much it for me. I've got there's some few things there that I think are great to, for further reading or podcasting. If you love a podcast, there's lots of some really interesting stuff to dive into. There's a great book, which I've listed there. It's called System 1, Unlocking Profitable Growth. It's all about how the brain works and how advertising and marketing can tap into it. Rory Sutherland, excellent behavioral economist. And I think that's it. Rob, got any questions that anyone wants to fire at me in the last few minutes?
I'll give people a minute or two if there's any questions coming through on the chat. Just while we wait for some of those, we would love any feedback. For those of you who've been to these sessions before, you know I say this at the end of every workshop, but to continue making sure these are of value to everybody, please just take 60 seconds just to complete a quick survey for us on the chat link. Jeff's going to share that now. It is really quick, just keen to hear your thoughts, how we can improve, what you're interested in the future. If you could take 2 minutes, that'd be wonderful. And I'm going to pause there to see if there's any questions coming in, and then if not, I will wrap us up.
Yeah, I think, guys, like, honestly, I realized that I could have just easily talked for longer because I did have more examples and things in there, but I realized that every time I showed you an example, I was like, oh, that's another 3 minutes or something. So there are some really good examples out there, both in kind of emotive advertising, manifesto style brand advertising, but also just ways that even in this kind of sustainable or not-for-profit sector, brands that are finding ways to kind of cut through and not just become another charity brand asking people to kind of do the right thing and be very altruistic.
Thanks for that, Hannah. There are a couple of questions coming through here. Just a few people asking about the Theory of Change workshop from a few weeks ago. Yes, you'll be able to find that on the Social Impact Hub website. We have all of the previous workshops listed. So I think if you can Google Social Impact Hub, RISE workshops, that should come up. If you can't find it, drop us a line. We do send you an email as well with the follow-up. So I hope you can find the recordings for this and previous workshops. And I'll use that also to say the third part of the series on outcomes measurement. So we've looked at, what is a theory of change? How do you use it to articulate impact? What does that mean in terms of the golden thread that Hannah touched upon today? Today, we've talked through that concept of like communications, brand manifesto, and that marketing branding piece. And then in a few weeks' time, we'll look at how do you start measuring outcomes? So trying to bring that whole piece together. So hopefully that's useful. Hannah, there's a question here about what are your strategies to resist deficit-based marketing? And I think you were just touching on that a minute ago.
I wanted just to ask if someone could clarify what they mean by deficit-based marketing.
That was my question. Hi, my name's Nee from Benevolent Society. If it's okay, I just go to chat instead of texting.
Yeah.
Deficit-based, I mean where the people in the advertising are the problem and they are needy and they need heroes, rather than, like, I was really inspired by your beautiful bunch, where there definitely was a sense of assistance and help, but it was to support women to get on their own feet and pursue their own drive in their own career.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like the absolute template for a lot of this marketing is show sad person, show person in need, show child that can't go to school and ask people to give. And I think that is one of the things that charities have probably created that template of marketing. I strongly believe that you can cut through and get better response, not by just showing people the sad, depressing state of the world, but actually painting a picture of what the better version is, and creating actually a sense of hope. I think people want that rather than, oh, I guess I should donate to this cause. There is probably a case study that says, oh, it's, I always think about the Smith family. It's like every ad campaign is very much the same needy child. And I think possibly with charity, there is a strong case for asking for donations and making the size of the problem really compelling. I think in social enterprises, though, you do have to have a little bit of a tweak on that to go, we're not just here to get donations, we're here to grow our brand and become, profitable, so that we can increase the impact.
Thanks, that's helpful. So it's more about depicting the future world where things are better and making the connection for the buyer, how they can contribute to that process.
Yeah, and if you can connect with them in that space of going, we're on this mission together, and by supporting us, this is what it says about you as a person, and kind of give them that opportunity to feel good about themselves as well.
Thanks. That helps me make that case in my organization and with my colleagues.
Yeah, I can imagine with at the Benevolent Society, you have got it's slightly different when you are just asking for donations. I do think that's there might be a special case there as well.
Yeah, it helps me with the conversation with my colleagues. What's that vision? What's that positive? What's that line that we want to grab people? And it doesn't necessarily have to be surrounded and attached to the problems and the challenges that we're facing.
That's right, because everybody else in your category is using the same tools and tactics as well. So yeah, you kind of probably beneficial to find a different way in.
Great, thank you for that one. And we have another one from Yumi Hannah, and she's to hear your views around the use of we and you. So she's having worked in fundraising, the use of you was promoted, not we. We was seen as more of the business or organization.
I kind of disagree with that. I think that the more that you can draw people in and get them to actually see themselves as part of the mission, and by saying, bringing the cause, the brand, and the audience together, I think you're creating a much more compelling story, versus when you use you, it becomes quite transactional. You are ultimately selling, like we are selling to you. We want something from you. My experience is that certainly in a brand manifesto or at that top level of the brand, talking about we and saying who you are for. We're for people who, we're a brand who cares about people. When you get down to, I don't know, the EDM that asks people to donate to your end of financial year fundraising campaign, I'm sure you can talk about you at that level when it is more transactional. But just think about what we've been doing today is trying to go for a much more of that bigger picture, higher order, creating some kind of story around the brand. And then as you get down and you've actually started to cut through, you've you've commanded some attention. You might have actually got someone to kind of click on something or sign up for something or subscribe to something or buy from you. Then you can switch into a more direct way of talking to them as you have actually kind of established that they're interested in your product and organization.
Wonderful. Well, I think that's everything in terms of the questions. Thank you everyone for joining today and for taking the time out of your day to be a part of this and for being so contributory in the chat and in your comments. And a huge thank you, Hannah, for your time and experience and expertise today. It's been super useful and really helpful in just making that link from theory of change into brand manifesto and those communication pieces. So thank you. I've certainly learned a lot, and I will wish you all a great rest of the day and weekend, and hopefully see you in the coming weeks on the outcomes measurement workshop. Thanks everyone, and have a great day.
Thanks everybody.